Chris Hill. I'm from Oshawa, pretty much born and raised. Grew up in Brooklyn and Whitby and Oshawa, so I haven't really left the area. Music world knows me as Chris Boneless.
My name is Aaron Sherbin, and I grew up in Oshawa, Ontario. Born and raised.
Ben from Oshawa.
Where are you from?
Tyler Primo, currently Peterborough by way of the Dirty, Oshawa.
All right, so my name is Corey Padgett. You want where I'm from now or where I'm from before? So I was born in a very small town in Ontario, but I was mainly raised and grew up in my formative years in Oshawa, Ontario.
So as a young skateboarder, I was absolutely fanatical about skateboarding. Years and years ago, I can't even remember what age we were, but we used to go and explore the forest. I know it's a foreign thing for kids these days, but we used to go and explore the forest. We actually found a VHS tape of a video cassette called The Search for Animal Chin. It's the Bones Brigade video. I think it's like the third one in the series. But it's basically the Bones Brigade, Tony Hawk, Steve Caballero, Lance Mountain, all those greats from back in the day, Mike McGill. So I was a huge skateboard fan, found that tape and changed my life. Wanted to be a skateboarder for the rest of my life after that. Result of being a skateboard fan, used to get Thrasher magazines, and Thrasher always had ads for bands like the Circle Jerks and DRI and the Dead Kennedys. And that, I think that's initially when I first kind of became aware that there was things in music that were a little bit different than what you heard on the radio all the time. I think musically, I discovered punk rock when I was in grade 8 or 9. It was probably grade 8. Had a few friends that started getting into that kind of music and were playing it all the time, and I fell in love with it instantly. I also had an older cousin, my cousin Craig. He was into bands like Metallica, Anthrax. Again, he liked the Dead Kennedys, the Exploited. All the early punk bands, and used to see his posters on the wall and sneak into his room when he wasn't around and put his tapes on and listen to whatever I could. I think that's how I discovered the Dayglow Abortions as well.
1996, 1997 probably.
What was that like for you?
Fun. It was new. I don't think I'd found any other music that had like that much angst and attitude, frustration.
I was probably about 12 years old, and it was brought in from. I grew up skateboarding, as you know, Jeremy, and back in the earlier days of skateboarding. Skateboarding was very synonymous with punk rock music, and I think that's where I got my first taste and heard this wonderful new sound and fell in love and still listen to it to this day. Well, I would say that it all started for me with one of my longtime old friends, Clayton Smith, and Andrew Stewart were probably the first two people I started listening to punk rock music with. And being in the skateboard scene, the first bands that really drew my attention was the fast, loud sounds of, NoFX and more skate generated punk bands like even the very first Gob, Too Late No Friends album, because them being Canadian and all, and being able to see them. And then I was in about grade 8, and Andrew Stewart, who was my best friend back then, and still is a good friend of mine to this day, got this great idea that we would get tickets to go to the dungeon. And we were quite young at the time, honestly. Like, if I had told my parents I was going, they probably would have been like, we really don't want you going and hanging out at that seedy club at that age. You know what I mean? And the first show I believe I ever went to was, I'm pretty sure Out of Hand. And I want to say Lucky Number 7. And that was back in the day when Out of Hand was still playing their set with Canadian Gothic, if you recall, before the Resurrection album, which became much more metal in its roots. And although a great album, just I always seem to really gravitate towards Canadian Gothic, and I still actually think it's a fabulous album to this day.
I was about 4 years old in, I don't know, this would have been like 89 or 90 or something. I was living in Brockville, Ontario at the time. And we went to the mall and there was like 3 guys with like spiked up blue mohawks. And I was like, and like leather jackets and patches and whatever, you know, the whole punk look. And I was like, man, like I remember as a 4-year-old being like, man, that looks awesome. Like I have no like, you know, no idea of what punk is at the time or anything like that. But I remember seeing that and being like, that looks so cool. And then like my older sister was into punk a bit, at least like the basic tier bands and stuff. And so I started discovering some music through her, and, you know, Rancid was really big at the time. So I'd see them on Much Music and stuff. So I think I kind of skipped a lot of the early like pop punk and skater punk intro that a lot of kids our age kind of had. I still listen to a lot of the basic bands, like obviously like Rancid and Sex Pistols and stuff. But pretty well right from the get-go, I was at least like kind of beyond that starter tier and into like basically the next starter tier, which is like Total Chaos and Exploited and stuff like that. Or like anyone who ever you know, had Soul Seek knows how great it was to find music, and like you'd find a band you really liked, being seeded by someone, and you could just go down the rabbit hole of like they'd have it in a containing folder called punk or like, you know, whatever, and you'd be like, man, whoever is seeding this album has great taste, so you'd start pigeonholing down that and seeing what other albums they had and downloading those.
Yeah, I was like 13, and just drew me in, brought me in, and started picking up a guitar and just making noise, man, and led me down that path.
That's why I drink beer, smoke pot, play music. You know I got a lot of what keeps me happy.
You go through everything. So I started with all like the hardcore bands, like, you know, everybody's entry level, Sex Pistols, things like that. You think that's the tip of the iceberg, but then you know, you start finding your own niche, and I think the skate punk scene with like Good Riddance, Pennywise, all that stuff. That's where I ended up. We had a really good local skate scene here, with bands like Out of Hand, Figure 4, Double Standard, the Feds from Lindsay, stuff like that. So
I don't know. I kind of split 2 ways. Like when Leftover Crack came out with Mediocre Generica, or however you pronounce it, that like absolutely blew my mind, because I think like a lot of there was a lot of like political kind of like, you know, there was a lot of punks that talked about politics, but I felt like that was kind of the first one where it was like, my God, like these guys are serious and this is like violently political. So it really just like absolutely blew me away. So that was really eye-opening to me at the time. I think I was like 15 or 16. Well, that dropped on September 11th. So yeah, I guess I was 15. I found it shortly after that. And then like a lot of like nihilistic, like thrashier punk hardcore, like Filth and The Pissed and stuff like that. And then I also went down like the rabbit hole of like of oi bands like RG Bargy and Last Resort and Discipline, stuff like that. Because obviously, like as a child of the early 2000s, you know, you see movies like Romper Stomper and stuff, and so you start getting interested in oi and stuff like that from movies like that. So yeah, just kind of all over the place.
But yeah, DRI, Dayglow Abortions. I liked all the old metal bands. You know, like I listened to Metallica, Anthrax, Slayer, Exodus. But yeah, the classic punk bands too, like Exploited, Sex Pistols, Dead Kennedys, Circle Jerks, big time Circle Jerks. Gangrene was another huge one for me. It was always the bands that kind of catered into the skateboarding. Like there's going to be an ongoing theme with that because it always goes back to it. Hence the behind.
Like aggressive expression of frustration. That could come out as like fun or angst. It was like good. It was when we were growing up. It was a good place for kids that didn't fit in with the status quo.
Personally.
Just fucking smash and steak, man. It's a little different these days now that I'm 40 plus. Things are different. You got mortgage, you got kids, you got all this stuff. But back then it was simple, man. It was just consumerism could suck my dick, you know? Like, and it was, you just find other like-minded people, man. And it was just destruction and fun all the time. That's what it was. Good times.
Well, it means a couple of things to me. One thing, it means equality, and I think that's a very strong point of any punk rock scene, and it's something that's been preached by some of my favorite bands that I still listen to this day. Equality is key. Women, men, anything. We're all equal. It doesn't matter. I think that's incredibly important. Another thing that it means to me is to kind of like fight against a tyrannical society, essentially, right? Like it's about rejecting traditional values and embracing what I would say like non-traditional values, you know, like because let's face it, so many of us have been whitewashed by our parents into believing what they believe, and it's kind of about, to me, rejecting those sort of things and learning about different things and being yourself, and really like only you can be you, you know, and not trying to be somebody else.
Really doesn't mean a lot to me now. Like it was something so great when I was growing up. I still listen to a lot of punk bands. I'm actually like in the midst of going through like my last FM from like 2006 when I was 20. And like looking up all these older punk bands I listened to and like going like I was just listening to like Toxic Narcotic, Cockney Rejects and stuff like that. I don't know, punk was like a wonderful time. I don't know if its time has passed in the world or what. I think of it less and less like it's, you know, it's something that was great to me, that was dear to me, but doesn't mean a lot to me now, which is kind of like a sad realization to sit here and say.
An active music scene, of course. Bands that are staying relevant and still getting out there and fighting the fight and trying to unite, you know, what people are interested in, you know, the topics that they're singing about, and you know, the just the general camaraderie of the punk rock scene is a big thing. Um, as you know, I always felt that our punk rock scene growing up could have been more inclusive. I think that another truly helpful and strong aspect of any punk rock scene is be inclusive to everybody. It shouldn't be something that's off the table just because of how you dress, or you know, maybe your ethnic background or who you are, or even if you come from a rich family or a poor family. That none of those things should matter. It should be the most inclusive thing, because at the end of the day, our voices tend to be small in comparison to a lot of the general mainstream, and we should be uniting through the camaraderie of our punk rock scene.
Less bullies. It's all like great to have a fashion contest and be like tribalist with this band and that band, but the more you like shit on each other, the less of a scene you're going to be able to have. You don't have to like everybody. If someone's being a shithead, then less like picking on kids for wearing the wrong t-shirt. Especially if it's their first fucking show. How do they know? When we were growing up, a lot of people, probably myself included, missed that whole thing. Because when you look at CBGBs, like Max's Kansas City, and those scenes, like, all those bands were unique. And then it became something where there was this formula and like attitude. And you couldn't sound too clean, or you're this, or you had to fit some sort of mold. And then that really like counterintuitive to what punk's supposed to be.
There's quite a few different things that contribute to a healthy scene. There's got to be a like the DIY is huge. There's got to be a willingness. Like Oshawa was so blessed to have so many people who absolutely kicked ass at putting on shows and contributed in so many ways. And you know, like I never had I was always too busy drinking to really have that drive to like put stuff on or whatever, but I'd always you know, help out. Like I ran door at so many different events just to do that, like free labor or whatever, to, you know, help put the show on. I'd stay late, I'd help sweep up, stuff like that. So you need people with like that drive to put stuff on, to organize it, because being a show promoter, like, you make no money being a show promoter. It's a ton of headaches. People inexplicably hate you for whatever reason, because like people are always looking to tear someone down when they have passion about anything. A punk scene's got to have like a lot of people with a DIY mentality to really get things going, and a lot of cash. They can, not a lot, but like the willingness to throw away cash, I guess is the bigger thing, which is probably harder and harder in this world and was easier back then. And then like, you need an all ages space. That's like non-negotiable. I mean, you know, like Oshawa had the dungeon, and that was phenomenal for everyone. You know, and don't get me wrong, like once I turned 19, I went to like Catch 22 and Atria and other punk bars, because I wanted to drink and whatever. But like, you need an all ages space. That's like non-negotiable. If you don't have one, you got to get inventive and find one. You know, and then there's just like, there's a million promoters that like, you know, like obviously Mike Majewski was a huge one. He put on more metal shows, but he also put on a ton of punk stuff too. He ran Scab Bombardment Productions before he passed. he introduced me to so much music, so much music. That was amazing. And it was always like, anytime he told me to come to a show, I was there. There was Juke Joint Productions, which I'm happy to hear has started again with Bo running it still. He did so much for the scene way back in the day. My first local concert was a $2 figure four show that he put on.
I think just being there for each other, man. One thing is growing up, everybody just assumed that was just like violence, and everybody's in there throwing like pogoing, doing mosh pits, doing all your things, and everybody just thinks it's violence, man. But when the thing about that, and the first thing I picked up on when I was younger, is you see somebody go down in there, man, and everybody is just in there picking them up. It's solidarity together, and I think that's the strongest part of it. I don't think it would mean as much if that wasn't it.
You kind of find like there's lots of ways to express yourself individually, but then there's also lots of stuff where you start to look at it and go, oh my God, everyone's a clone. Like, what are we doing? So like, it's kind of like twofold where like I'm getting into a movement and I'm like finding bands on my own and making patches and stuff like that and going to shows, but then also like within that whole like subgenre of like standing out and doing whatever, you're also sort of becoming a carbon copy of the guy next to you from everyone else's view as well. So like
I would say that definitely one of the things that's been steadfast with me over the years, a lot of it is, I've always appreciated the do-it-yourself movement. Like, you don't really need stuff that you have to go and buy. You can make it yourself and sew it yourself. And as you know very well, Jeremy, from us hanging in your mom's house when we were kids, building jean jackets and combat jackets and all the rest of it. And, I always really liked the do-it-yourself era, which really had a lot to do with the person that I've become, to be honest, because the DIY scene always had a lot to do with values that I still hold true to today. Which
didn't buy shit from the mall. You had to paint it all yourself or bribe someone. A lot of trial and error. A lot of fun. Like, everyone thinks, oh yeah, punk rock's so badass. Everyone's sitting around doing each other's hair, painting, and like spending 2 hours getting your mohawk to stand up, and who has like the best dye job. And there's a lot of effort goes into looking like you're a vagrant.
It's just like, I don't know, like just getting out there, hitting the road in a van with a bunch of fucking other dirty dudes, and just getting out there and staying at people's places, just having a good time, man. Having a good time.
I don't know. My thing with the whole punk rock thing is that we're all kind of in it together. The thing that I've learned from touring all over Canada is, there's a scene like there is in Oshawa in every little place that outside of here. Like everywhere you go, it's the same shit going on, and there's people that support the punk rock scene all across Canada, and it's like it's a closer knit community than you think it is. Like I think the people on the outside don't realize. They just kind of think, oh, they're into punk music or whatever, but it's like they don't realize that we know fucking people all over the fucking place, and like we follow what fucking the other punk rockers are doing, and like especially musically, obviously, but culture wise as well, right? Like there's a lot of good things that punk rock has always stood up for, and punk rock's always just been a place for me to be. It's always been a safe place, I think, for a lot of people, and I think the people that really care about the community like to keep it safe, and you know.
I tried to be myself. I never asked for anybody's help. Look too long, you felt that you should fuck with me.
So it was at the Italian Rec Center. I don't know if you've touched on this with anyone else you're interviewing, but like to give a brief quick history for everyone who doesn't know in the Oshawa punk scene, there in Oshawa there's like a ton of cultural halls. Like there's 3 Polish halls, there's an Italian hall, a German Austrian hall, Ukrainian hall, all these different things. And all of the DIY show organizers there would rent out like all of these cultural halls because it was like surprisingly easy. They trusted us somehow for whatever reason, and it was super cheap. And for anyone out there who doesn't know and is looking to organically grow your own scene, renting out a hall and getting party insurance is way cheaper, and charging for a ticket is way cheaper than saying you're putting on a concert and getting bar insurance. And you can still do like all of the same things. So just like a quick tip for anyone who ever wants to do this, that is the way to go. But that's what we always used to do.
I don't know who threw it, but somebody convinced the Italian hall that Cankerface play. I don't even remember who any of the other bands would have been. But it was the exact opposite of the Polish hall. So it wasn't, here's the keys, go nuts. It was like all these old Italian guys, and they're like serving drinks and like, so like it wasn't hard to get served, but like they really cared about their hall. It was like their social club, and they weren't gonna let a bunch of shithead kids tear it apart.
Oh, yeah, the Italian Rec Center. That was a wild show. If I remember correctly, it was Closet Monster, Cankerface, One Down, and Out of Hand was supposed to play, and who else? Red Beavers or somebody? No, One Down was Red Beavers after. That was Jared's band after. There was one other band. I think Al Nolan, actually, from, what was his band? The Down Belows. They were the other band that was supposed to play because Al Nolan was there. I remember specifically during one of the melees that broke out. But yeah, crazy night. Sold a lot of tickets for the fucking place. It was packed. All the bands played really, really awesome. The problem with the Italian Rec Center is that there's giant crystal chandeliers that hang down to the point where you can just like reach up and touch them if you want, which isn't the smartest thing to have at a punk rock show.
No. I remember sitting in the stairwell to get in, and that was the first and only show that they ever did there. And oh yeah. I don't think the Italian Rec Center had any idea what they were opening themselves up to at that point, especially with Cankerface as an opener. That tends to breed a lot of friggin' high energy drunken fuel. But I remember sitting in the, like, waiting to get in the stairwell that was kind of one of those kind of similar to the dungeon where the stairwell came down to the front doors and you're all standing there waiting to get in. And I was with Mike Liscombe at the time. And I remember he had a couple of his buddies with him that I didn't know so well at the time. I can't remember the one fella's name, but he's a good young fella. And he was with, you remember Puppy? I'm pretty sure he was with Puppy too. And we laughed about it for years actually, because at that time, Figure Four had broken up.
It was weird because they didn't know what to expect, so they had these like tables all set up, and I'm pretty sure it got shut down early. But I remember I was way too fucking hammered, and just stumbling around the whole place, and it was freezing cold outside. There was a ton of snow. And we started pre-gaming in the laundromat down the street. It was me, Aaron Sherbin, Mark Trapesky, maybe Jay Buck, and maybe a couple other guys. But by the time we show up, we've been drinking like 40s and max ice. Fucking just piss heads. I remember running into my buddy BJ from Pickering out front, great big guy, a little older. BJ, and he kept being like, "Get the fuck away from me." I was annoying as shit, I guess. He kept pushing me in the snow, and, and I just remember a bunch of, kept getting thrown out by these like old Italian guys, like, "Get the fuck out of here." And like, they managed to keep that place from getting like trash. Might have been a broken table or something, but it was like stark contrast to the Polish hall shows. And that was the only punk rock show that was ever at the fucking Italian club in Oshawa. I think Matt from the Feds was like just giving it to some chick in the snow right out in front of the venue, and there's like people puking beside them, and fucking, and I'm there getting like thrown on my ass by my buddy BJ. Fucking, yeah, I'm pretty sure that if Cankerface wasn't headlining, that was the end of the show by the time they were done.
So local heroes, I'll call them. Garrett can thank me for that. Local heroes, Cankerface went on stage, and all hell fucking broke loose. They started ripping down the chandeliers. There was fights all over the fucking place. I believe Bo Bomberry was the one behind putting on that show. I think as a result, Bo got in a fight out front. I remember cranking a guy in the face a few times, trying to get him off of Bo. I can't remember who it was. I do know the guy that I punched, but I can't remember his name. Either way, sorry. But I ended up ripping a guy off Bo. There was just fights all over the fucking place. I believe the cops showed up. Oddly enough, earlier in the night, I was in the back parking lot, and this is my own completely separate story on this night. I was in the back parking lot getting something from my van, like gear-wise or something like that, and this Oshawa thugged out, like, homie guy, like, looks like he would probably hang out with Coolio. Like, literally. Comes up to me and, like, literally grabs me by the scruff. He's like, "Who the fuck are you?" And I'm like, "Who the fuck are you?" So I'm literally holding this fucking guy, like, and we're fucking shouting at each other back and forth, like, "Who the fuck are you?" Like, I'm getting pissed off. Like, I was fucking trying to be a macho fucking guy back in the day. But I ended up having to fucking drop the guy. And I ended up walking in to the venue from the back door, walking to the front door to try to tell somebody what just happened, and that was when Bo got fucking attacked by the other guy. He ended up fucking slugging him too, so it was like literally in a matter of fucking 20 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, how long it was for me to walk from the back to the front with talking to people and whatnot. Fucking, yeah, I ended up fucking punching 2 people that night. And I remember Out of Hand didn't even get to play. We were supposed to play after Cankerface, and that became a reoccurring thing, actually. Like, we used to play with Cankerface a lot, and we started having a rule where Cankerface would have to play afterwards, because after we played, because a lot of that shit happened when they played. There was always something that fucking happened crazy. Like,
so there was a show at the Italian Hall, and it was one down, Cankerface, a few other local bands. I remember we were no longer, I think that was the night we got kicked out of the Italian Rec Center for good because someone pulled the chandelier from the ceiling, if I'm not mistaken. But I remember that show, like, going to it and like everyone spiking up their hair and whatever. And I got like my sister's New Kids on the Block t-shirt because I was like, I need to stand out within this crowd of like quote unquote individuals.
Played that night called the Down Belows, I remember. And the guy had written at the Italian Rec Center, he'd written magic marker across his eyes, like across like a visor. And he was like, "Where's all the guys with the mohawks? I thought you guys were fucking cool. You guys are nothing but fucking pussies." He's just like, oh man, it was just like, And then everything just went friggin' nuts. I don't know. And then eventually they came in and realized things were getting out of hand and broke up the night. I buggered off and got out of there before the shit hit the fan. And because I had things on me that I didn't want to get caught with. And basically, from what I hear, after they shut down the show and things, I wasn't there, but I heard that they like ripped down the chandelier. Someone went and hung off the chandelier and ripped it down from the ceiling, and things just went friggin' nuts. As far apparently, I wasn't there to actually corroborate the story, but many reputable sources told me the story.
It's so hard to go into the specifics. Like, there was so much fighting, so much partying, so much absolute wild stuff that we did.
Rented the Polish Hall in Olive. My buddy Sean Seguin was in the hospital. And he went AWOL in a wheelchair and showed up in a wheelchair, fucking all busted up. Against medical advice, he would have left. And there must have been 6-8 fights. Bathrooms were trashed. Everywhere was trashed. I know we didn't get our deposit back, but it's amazing no one ever got taken to small claims court. And I remember the show shut down. Some kid got up on stage, tried to fight one of the bands, and one of the singers power slammed the kid off the stage. I think he had to leave in an ambulance. But he got up on stage, took a swing at the singer, and off the stage you go. I remember someone picked a fight with my buddy Travis outside. While he was mouthing off, someone else hit him in the face with an egg. Travis goes, "There's scrambled eggs all over your face," before he beat the shit out of the guy. That was one of the funniest things I think I ever saw. I don't even know if all the bands got to play that night.
I remember too, there was lots of times down at the Polish Hall show, and there was obviously usually drugs and alcohol involved, but like I remember seeing the Klopex at the Olive Polish Hall, and they brought in this great big cross and set it on fire and smashed it, and everyone just started smashing everything. Friggin', oh man, things just went nuts. And I remember he was wearing that shirt. What did it say? It was like, "Fuck you, you fucking fuck," or something like that. That show never got shut down. That show never got shut down. And if I'm not mistaken, that was the one where Kevin Sullivan showed up, that old skinhead fella, didn't he? And then friggin' Damon kicked his ass or whatever.
We could get into that Polish Hall show. That's another crazy Cankerface moment. They were on stage and some guy got on fucking stage, and I won't mention who it was or any specifics, but I literally saw a guy get launched in the air and land on his head, and literally right at that point I was like, the scene's dead, like it's over. I was like, the cops are coming, the ambulance is coming, this guy has just passed away in front of all of us, and this is while other guys are like fucking booting him on the floor, and it's like, holy fuck. Like literally sitting there watching, I seriously, it felt like I was watching the whole entire scene just fucking crumble. But that was the kind of craziness that happened at Cankerface shows. But yeah, that's another crazy story too. That was a Polish Hall show too, and fucking Out of Hand played that one. And yeah, I remember when we played Will Fight, fucking, I think it was Damon Drunk from Punch Drunk and Kevin. This guy Kevin ended up fucking fighting during that song, and it kind of became like a normal thing at a bunch of shows after that. People would fight when we played that song, and yeah.
Was a bunch of fucking goofs, local Toronto, well, like local to the GTA, I guess. They were from Toronto. It came down, they played with Punch Drunk, Cankerface, few other bands. Negator the Almighty was Jacob's band that I was trying to remember earlier. I still can't remember the one with Rory. I think it was Rory's band that played that night. A few other bands. And I remember BFG's played like just so many songs. And I remember like nobody wanted the show to shut down. It was just such a fun night. And at one point, Steve Goof, the lead singer, we were all chanting for more. And I remember him saying, we played 24 songs. What more do you want us to play? And everyone started screaming 24 more, 24 more. And they kept on. They probably played like 10 or 15 songs as their encore that night. It was amazing. That was a really fun one.
Another thing that happened there, skinheads showed up, and we were really anti-racist. Like it was a thing back then. If people were being racist, like they just weren't allowed. Like they weren't allowed around us. And there's always the skins. There's Charity. I think the one guy's name was Ian. And Fitz, what a dumb shit that guy was. He stuck his head in the window and was like yelling and trying to pick a fight. And one of the guys jumped off the back and gave him like a flying elbow. And we thought he killed this guy because his head just bounced off the friggin' window ledge because it was a basement level apartment. And dude was just laying there. And we were like, oh shit, But like, he started moving, and all we did was push him out the window and shut the window. We were like, hey, we're good now.
Point, but I remember seeing skinheads on the norm, and thank God we had mentors like Garrett and some of those guys that really preached anti-racism, and they kicked the shit out of those guys every chance they had, and they just kind of disappeared. But yeah, stories there. I remember friggin' sitting there with Steve Burleton, also, has passed now, unfortunately. What a wild man that guy was. I remember sitting there and we were in between sets, and he friggin' cop car pulls up, and friggin' he just opens up the fuel door of it and starts pissing in it. And the cop's just like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm filling her up. And then like he just takes off. I go over to the friggin' Hasty Market to get cigarettes. I'm in there getting cigarettes, and sure enough, he comes in. I'm like, oh God, what kind of trouble am I gonna get into now? He just like looks over and friggin' just like pushes over a chip rack and friggin' takes off. I'm just like, oh man, what a wild man. I remember we used to call it the Burleton cocktail he'd drink. You remember Crest? That 10% garbage beer that tastes like hairspray and pine needles. I remember sitting out back the old Longhorn, friggin' drinking that, and he found like a hockey stick, and he's shooting rocks at people going in and out of that Continental massage place. And oh man,
Oh God, at EP Taylor's, moshing too hard, and two guys grabbing me and another guy punching me in the face, and me thinking like in my head, like, well, if they're gonna, like I have no way to defend myself. So if they're gonna get me, I'm gonna get them. So I started headbutting the guy's hand as hard as I could every time he punched me. And that was actually the night that moshing got banned at EP Taylor's. Like all of my stories are just like a consistent theme of that's the last time we could do this there. But I remember like him breaking his hand on my face and like just being like, man, that was punk rock. Like
I remember from the EP Taylor's concert was they were very hard on no mosh pitting. And that just didn't really work with any of us, if I recall correctly. And I believe pretty much all of us got thrown out for either joining a mosh pit or inciting said mosh pit. And I remember we just like, what I remember best was I remember Steve Novak almost got in a friggin' fight with some guy, and that's really unlike Steve. Like he was never the fighting type. And I just remember it so clearly because the guy was like, fuck you, fuck your parents, fuck your cat, fuck this. He's like, fine, fuck my parents, whatever. I don't even have a cat. It's just like, oh, it's just, and just totally like actually giving it back to the guy. And like, Steve's no sissy or nothing like that. He's just usually not much of a friggin', kind of aggressive type of guy. It was like one of the first times I ever saw him get like aggressive. Maybe it was the Jim Beam, but I I remember like basically just like looking at some of you guys as soon as like finally like the good band came on, because there's a bunch of junk, like a lot of young kid bands that wasn't really our thing, and a lot of stuff that wasn't punk music. And that, let's face it, at that time, yeah, all we wanted to listen to was punk rock. And I remember basically just looking at it, everyone looking at each other and being like, okay, it's happening. It's happening. Yep, it's happening. We all got thrown the hell out. And I remember we had nowhere else to go. And I think we were waiting for a bus or something like that. And we took all the letters on the friggin' thing. I don't remember what it said initially for like the Battle of the Bands or whatever. And we switched it around. So it said like child anal in rear or something really vulgar, like something awful like that. Man, we were friggin' pains in the ass back then, weren't we?
But it was the Brood and the Klopeks. At least 2 other bands. But it wasn't one of these big 8, 9, 10 band things. And it went really well despite us having no idea what we were doing. I don't even know if we had handbills. But it all came together. It was in the summer, so that would have been 2000, 2001 maybe. And then Jacob had booked the Klopeks, but he didn't offer them any money. I remember talking to them afterwards. I was like, oh, how much did we pay? And they're like, well, you didn't. Hold on. They came from like Niagara Falls or Welland or something. Guelph. And we apparently didn't give them a guarantee or anything from the door. So I went in and turned Jacob upside down and shook him by his ankles and grabbed some of the door money, gave it to them. There's no way we got our deposit back. I think we might have broke even. That wasn't the point, though. It was a good show. It was good fun.
Where do I begin? So, Out of Hand, my old band, used to play bass and sing in. We played the Polish Hall on Olive. I want to look at a poster, which I can't see right now. What year was it? I want to say 97 or 98 we played the Polish Hall. It was our CD release party for our first record that we released on Raw Energy Records, which was called Canadian Gothic. We were a pretty popular band locally at the time, and to make things even better, we brought the second most popular band, or probably more popular than us, Figure 4, who I ended up joining later on. They played with us, and we also had the Bunch of Fucking Goofs and the Dayglow Abortions come out and play. Yeah, it was a pretty fucking crazy night. It was hectic, rowdy, pretty crazy. I think there was probably 300 or 400 people that packed into the Polish Hall that night. I guess, yeah, we had played, had a great night. Everybody was fucking on fire for us that night. It was actually one of the more memorable shows in Oshawa that I've ever played, just the support that we felt that night. Like, the 4 of us were just elated because it was such a packed house, and everybody just fucking went berserk when every band played, and it was just such a great night. Anyways, BFGs went on, and they did their traditional fucking smashing the TVs. So there's like glass and shit all over the fucking floor. And a couple fights ensued. Pretty mild for like Oshawa standards. Just a couple fisticuffs, and I think guys shook hands and like ended up hugging. Like it was buddies that were fighting over the last beer or some shit. Anyway, Dayglow Abortions is on stage, and I was at side stage watching them play, and somebody ran up and said somebody has let off the fire extinguishers in the basement and pulled the fire alarm. And we're like, oh shit. So apparently, I think it was Doug from Figure 4, Doug Smart. He ran downstairs into the basement, and there was like literally fire extinguisher foam everywhere, the alarm's going off. End result, Dayglow's still on stage. They're still fucking playing while it's going on. The cops fucking show up. The fire department shows up. Through every single fucking door, there's cops with billy clubs and just trying to collect people. People are jumping out of windows, going out the back door, getting chased by cops down the street. The fire department is trying to figure out how to turn off the fucking fire alarm. And like Dayglow's literally on stage, and when the cops busted in, this is the greatest part of the whole fucking thing. So Jimbo Jack was the singer of Dayglow at the time. He's on stage singing "Arg Fuck Kill." Basically, the cops fucking came in the back door, and he just started shouting "Arg Fuck Kill." Like Bonehead and the rest of the band stopped, didn't fucking play a single note after that. They saw the cops, and probably fucking half of them out the fucking side door. But Jimbo's up there going "Arg Fuck Kill," and I just remember everybody in the crowd turning to the cops and like fucking chanting "Arg Fuck Kill." So, of course, the cops are going to fucking start chasing people and arresting everybody that's fucking resisting and all this fucking shit. So, in the melee of everything, I don't know how the fuck we didn't get arrested, because we were probably the most wasted people in the fucking room. But through the whole thing, we ended up getting our fucking picture taken by the paper. I think it was the Oshawa Times or something. It had a picture of Out of Hand sitting on the back of the fire truck, with the fire department on one side and the cops on the other side, like still fucking doing their shit. And we're like sitting there taking a picture through the whole thing. And it was in the paper the next day. It was like local show gets out of hand or something like that. It was like,
I believe you were there too when we went to that Polish Hall show that was at the Banting Polish Hall, not the Olive Polish Hall. And we all kind of knew what was kind of happening, and we had heard rumors that, the show might get shut down because, they did bring in beer and other things, which we've never had at a concert previous. Usually it was always just bring your own, right? But they actually had kegs and things like that. Things probably got a little bit more overzealous than they should have. And I believe it was Mike Majewski that threw that show. God rest him. I remember sitting in a sandbox. I can't remember. I think I might have been with Mike. And the police actually came over and hassled me. And this was well before the show. And we were like sitting in a sandbox that was like kind of behind the thing, just because it was like a ledge, having a beer, like waiting. And Dan Jordan had brought me back a cigar from Cuba. So I was having a big old cigar. The cops walk over, and we, obviously had tossed our beers, and they friggin' bring us over to the friggin' cop car, open our bags, search us. We got booze, everything else. And it's like, I'm 19. Like, what do you want? What do you want from me? Like, I'm not drinking in public. My beer's in my bag. Like, I'm going to an after party after a show. Like, what do you want? And they just kept hassling us. And then they asked me my name. I wouldn't give it to them, of course, because why would I? Like, I wasn't doing anything wrong. So, like, I don't really need to comply. And so eventually they ended up taking my wallet or whatever and searching, and just so happens that like the cops like, oh yeah, your dad he's Ken Sherburne. Yeah, I'm like, he's like, he started looking at me funny. He must probably played hockey against him or something as a kid, you know what I mean? And then he left me alone. But oh, that was an interesting show. I remember Knife Hammer played, and a lot of bands from and Knife Hammer was from Peterborough, I believe. Really nice fella. I remember one time I had him up at my place after another show, like when he had come down from Peterborough and I had nowhere to stay, and he was fronting that band at the time. Forgive me, but his name escapes me at the moment. But man, what a nice guy. And I remember that everything just broke open and went nuts. Like basically the cops came, shot everything down. Like we only got about, I think Liam's band Devoured played at that show too. And I think that's the only time I was lucky enough to see them, and they were an interesting group too. And if I'm not mistaken, Jeremy, was it Cankerface I think played as well. But man, we got to see a few bands at least before the cops showed up. But I remember stuff just broke open and went nuts. And then it turned into this all out friggin' just punk rock friggin' fury afterwards when we all left the hall. And I remember Mike ended up getting arrested because we were trying to start some tractor that was sitting there. Everything just went nuts. I don't remember how many people ended up in the drunk tank that night, but frig, there was a few.
There's one at the Polish Hall. Those were, everybody will tell you that, you know, Dungeon was the place. Nah, man, the Polish Hall was a place. The Dungeon was the place where a lot of people were just like getting into the scene. That was the spot. But then you had the rest of us that have been there for a little bit, and those Polish Hall shows were wild and crazy, man. There was one time the cops showed up. I can't remember who was playing. I know it was Ripcords. I want to say Cankerface, maybe Punch Drunk. I don't remember, but things started getting wild. Things were getting smashed everywhere. People were just like out front. Everybody in the neighborhood was freaking out, losing their minds. And we're all drunk. We're all drinking, doing our thing. And I go out. I'm looking for my roommate at the time. And then I see him getting hauled away by the cops and thrown into the back of the paddy wagon. And then my drunk ass decides, hey, man, I'm going to go beat this cop up, man, because he's got my buddy, you know? And like that takes it back to the punk rock sticking together, right? It's like, hey, my roommate's going to jail. I'm going to get that cold grilled cheese and warm glass of milk with him, you know what I mean? So I start running over towards there, man, and the lead singer, Paul Gott from Ripcords, comes, grabs me. He's like, Ty, what are you doing, man? You can't go fighting cops, bro. And the cop's just standing there. He knew I was coming. Paul just pulls me away, throws me in, and then everybody's like scattering, trying to figure out what we're doing. And then we drive over to the dungeon, and we just walk in. Everybody's like, no, you got to pay. We're like, we're not paying shit. We tried to take over the whole show. We just were like, I walked over. We're just like trying to unplug shit, trying to switch it over. And John at the time, the owner, was like, guys, you can't just come in here, man. These guys they have the show and all this stuff. But we tried to take it off, and you know, things died down. We ended up going to somebody's place, and the bands ended up doing like acoustic versions and stuff. So that was pretty good, man.
Right after I discovered Leftover Crack, going there with my friend Dan and my girlfriend Melissa, who is now my wife, way back, going there and smoking a joint and listening to Leftover Crack and just chilling, and like stuff like that was so like, it was so great to do stuff like that, you know, and like small groups of friends. There was like a real just like us against them, like feeling, you know. So when you went out and did stuff like that when you're like 15 and you're breaking into a building and smoking pot and, you know, listening to dumb music and whatever, it felt like something bigger than it was.
It was down that way. And I remember there was a couple of guys that were living in the basement. One of the guys' nicknames was Skid, and the other guy's name was Andrew. I can't remember his last name, but they used to call him something like Chaos or something like that. But there was nothing really chaotic about the fella. At that point, Ben was living on the upstairs. I think Christine was on the middle floor, and they were living in the basement. And I remember I started pouring like beers down the vent or something like that to just see if it would like come out like downstairs, like old like friggin' flat beers that were just sitting in the room or whatever. And then Kevin saw me. He's like, oh, he friggin' took like, remember those old Chicago bowls, like friggin' garbage cans? He like filled it with water and poured it down the vent, and water was coming through their ceiling and everything. And something happened, like they said something threatening or whatever. And I remember we threw fucking barbecues and bikes and shit all down their stairwell so they couldn't get out. And the friggin', I can't remember exactly how it came to be, but they threatened something, and we were all loaded and being idiots. And let's face it, like Kevin brought out the worst in most people when he hung out with them. But he's sometimes really fun to party with. But yeah, I remember throwing like shopping carts and friggin' barbecues and all kinds of shit down the stairwell so they couldn't get out, so that they had to come up through the friggin' door that came through the apartment that we were in. And the cop showed up and made us take all the shit out of the stairwell. And after everyone got evicted from that place, I'm pretty sure friggin' that Johnny O fella, he friggin' broke into there and like squatted in there for like a good long time. Because I remember when I went over and had a few beers with him there after he was squatting in it with, I think, Ben and actually Lindsay.
All right.
So I got this one. It's not like about any shows or anything, but so I had this homemade tattoo machine, just this piece of shit. I tattooed myself. I do all this stuff. You made it work. It plugged in, did everything, made a spoon, remote control car, whatever. And one of the buddies there, we used to call him Dumbfuck. That was his name. He's cool with it. That was his thing. So he's like, man, I want that on my ass. I'm like, you want Dumbfuck on your ass? And he's like, yeah, man. So I'm like, all right, cool, man. I'll do it for you. So I'm there. I'm putting dumb on one cheek, and sure enough, right there on the other, fuck, right? Like big, like this big. And then I'm sitting there. I finished the K, and I was like, all right. So I just started doing something else. He's like, what are you doing, man? I was like, oh, just the bottom of the K, man. Don't worry about it. He's like, you better not be putting an anarchy symbol on my ass, man. I don't want that. I'm like thinking to myself, I'm putting Dumbfuck on the ass. What does this matter, right? But well, here we are. I'm doing it. I finished doing this A, and he looks back. He's like, yo, what the hell, man? I told you not to do it, right? The ink's running into his ass. I'm using my sock. I pass it to him to wipe his ass. Get the ink out of his ass crack. He gets up because he's got his, everything's like hanging out. He gets up, and we're at my neighbor's house, and dude's pit bull jumps up on the couch and then just starts humping the couch where this man was laying. And we just said, I'm like, all right, man, see you later, dude. We're like, just left this dude's house, man. Stuff's just everywhere. There's like this nasty ass sock on the floor. Dogs are humping the couch, friggin'. We just leave, man. There's ink everywhere. And then, and dude couldn't sit for like 3 days. He'd be sitting there, like, coming, he'd just be sitting. And it was just the stupid shit that we did every day. And I was like, that was just like a regular ass weekend.
Mickey Mouse is dead, got kicked in the head. Cause people got too serious, they planned out what they said. They couldn't take the fantasy, tried to accept reality.